welcome to another special episode of the Talent GTM podcast. I'm Krissy, and with me, I have Vic. Vic is the head of upper mid-market enterprise sales at Rocketlane. And man, what a journey that you have had since being here. So excited to talk to you today, and thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's, like you said, an incredible journey so far. We're excited about where we're going in the future. And, hopefully I can answer your questions really well.
Yeah, for sure. So what brought you to Rocketlane, and what makes this role different from past experiences that you've had?
This, I think, is my first experience with a company at this stage. I came in as founding AE. We were trying to get product market fit and get into the market really early. Few things stood out for me. So first is the team themselves. I think Shri, Vignesh, Deepak, the founders, are amazing. I worked with them previously at Freshworks, and they've always been laser focused on building best-in-class product. And I think that stood out for me initially. The second part is also the space itself. When I was looking at the space, I realized that most of the tools in the space were 10, 15 years old. They'd just been acquired by PE companies, which meant there's a slowdown on innovation. So it was ripe for the taking. And the space was calling out for a modern, best-in-class, AI-ready tool. And I think that's what Rocketlane was building. So saw a lot of synergy there, and that's why this was exciting for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, what you are doing is incredible, and not just different, but it's unique in this time of responsible growth. I guess, when it comes to being in mid-market and selling, knowing that sales is getting harder, right? What are the biggest challenges that you see selling it in mid-market companies today? And how do you kind of navigate your team through that?
I think post-COVID's been a very interesting time to sell into mid-market. Teams are decentralized, which is the biggest thing. Previously, you had an organization, you could go in, do workshops, run a POC for the customer, but that's changed now. You've got evaluation teams, operation teams, leadership that's spread across different regions, and that makes running evaluations harder. So one of the main things that our AEs do now is try to map what individuals are looking for, what is their pain points, what do they want to achieve, what are their goals, and that extends the overall sales process. I think that's a huge challenge for us. It means there's so much individual conversations that are happening, but the positive side is then we're building relationships across the board when it comes to some of these mid-market deals.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one thing I had mentioned in that earlier conversation, kind of your point of needing to understand the pains and everything, is reps need to have more empathy. You can't understand those things if you can't empathize with your client. And I think in this new world, if you don't have empathy, you're going to fail, whether you're SMB, mid-market, enterprise. And I think that's where I see a lot of sales reps that are struggling, is because they're just trying to pitch without truly understanding what their client's going through. And you can't understand if you don't have empathy for them.
100%. I think these days there's a calling for AEs themselves to be thought leaders.
Yes.
Consultants, when they're coming into this, nobody wants to hear a product pitch because it's not about the product anymore. It's about what my pains are and how can you solve it. I think the slightly different aspect to mid-market today is also how AI comes into the space. So for PS leaders today, it's still a very manual process. There's still a lot of tooling in place, but they haven't seen how their world can change with AI. So also being able to sell a vision and a dream and help these leaders perceive it is another challenge for us when it comes to mid-market.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When it comes to sales strategy, how do you coach your AEs to effectively move business deals forward and close more business?
Great question. I think you called out a couple of very important points here. You spoke about empathy. I think it's very important for AEs to be empathetic today. They have to treat themselves as consultants for the customers themselves or the prospects themselves. They're not looking at themselves as a product expert, but more as an expert in the space. So for us, that's PSA. So I'm expecting AEs to be more effective in understanding what podcasts are in the space, understanding what thought leadership looks like today. What are other leaders talking about? So have a real ear to the ground for what's happening in the space today, for them to be able to go preach that to leaders, because you're speaking to people who've been in the industry for 25, 30 years. And a lot of the AEs today on our team are green in this space. So, I think the initial learning curve is the hardest part, but once you're through that, it's a really, really straightforward conversation that you can have with people.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. When it comes to the buyer mindset, again, talking about this new market that we've been in for about, 4 years, right? And it looks like it's here to stay, even with all the bumps and changes along the way that we keep seeing year over year. But what's changed, in your opinion, on how mid-market buyers approach SaaS purchases? What's the biggest change that you've seen?
I think the three main themes that I've seen mid-market buyers look at today is radical productivity, operational efficiency, and cost management. So those are ideally the three main themes that they're looking at as huge pain points for them. It's not always easy for a tool like Rocketlane to show long-term growth within a small POC. So if they're running a 3-week POC, we're not able to directly perceive what that long-term efficiency gains are going to be. So one of the ways we've approached that is by building value assessments. So the way we run that is we sit down with an individual contributor, a manager, an exec on the customer side and understand what happens in their day-to-day. And then we start looking for areas where we can build better efficiency and quantify that as time, as dollar value. So that leads to us building a business case. So huge feedback that we get from leadership on the customer side is, hey, we're being asked to do more with less. So how can you help me build that radical efficiency? So as long as we can build a really strong business case, give it to our champion internally so they can do a ton of the internal selling, I think that will improve our chances of helping these leaders succeed. And, I think that changes the mindset of all these mid-market buyers on the customer side.
Yep. No, that makes sense. And then coming to Rocketlane, I'd love to hear your view of how you explain Rocketlane simply to folks in layman terms of what you all are doing. But then also, what do you think makes you all stand out in the sales process right now in a market that is so uptight about buying anything that's not absolutely mission critical?
Great question. I think two parts to your first part, which is, what does Rocketlane do differently as a product? I think PSA has historically been very internally focused. It's not customer facing, but these are high touch customer implementations, right? So your engagement cannot be fully internally focused. You can't have your customers waiting for a steering committee meeting to understand what the next thing on the implementation is or where is it stuck. It needs to be continuous and you need to hold each other accountable. So I think that's the first place where we add a ton of value. The second is PSA has always been a back office tool. So it's been for finance, it's been around for resource management, for project accounting, things like that. And usually these teams use a separate tool to project manage a project. So what we've done is link both of these together to say, hey, any changes on the project should impact immediately what happens in the back office. So there's that connection between the front and back office that allows live data to be processed for accounting, for resources, for staffing, for finance. So I think that's the entire value prop that Rocketlane engages in that sees so much value on the customer side. To answer your second question, I think from a sales process perspective, we have very deep category expertise. So we run a community called Preflight. It has over 4,000 people across the world in the post-sale world. So we have a real ear to the ground on, what are the challenges that these people are facing on a day-to-day, or what are hot button topics that people are talking about today. And the second thing is we also run Propel, which is our annual conference. Today there isn't an annual conference run by a product company. We want this to be an area where thought leadership comes in. So we have leaders from across the space coming in talking about what's next in PSA or in the post-sale world. And I think both of those allow us to get a very deep expertise, but also for Rocketlane to be perceived as a thought leader and a subject matter expert, and not just a product company.
Yep. No, that makes sense. And just a couple more questions here. How does Rocketlane support AEs in growing in their careers?
Great question. I think the first part, there's two parts to it, right? One is, what is the culture that we want to foster within Rocketlane? The first part is challenging each other to be better. We're not running with an individualistic mindset. We're challenging each other to be better for us to grow as a team. I think that's hugely important. The second part is visibility into the business itself. So I had the experience of what it was like to build product from scratch, because we were essentially pseudo product managers as initial salespeople, right? You're telling product, hey, these are the things that are important to the customer. This is what they're feeding back. So I think giving even reps who come in today visibility into how product operates. What does a new module launch look like? How does marketing and product come together for product marketing management, right? So all of those are important portions that allow an AE who's coming in today, if they want to be a founder in the future themselves, they get visibility across the board. And I think that's huge. And I think the final thing is structured coaching. As a AI company, we believe in AI first training as well. So we're bringing in as much tooling as possible that enables an AE to be a better version of themselves, not just from leadership coaching, but their own ability to analyze what they're doing on a day-to-day.
Yep. No, that makes sense. I think that's great. And, really helps speak to the culture that you all aren't just committed to having, but actually have, right? Seeing it firsthand. And I think so many companies aspire for that, but fall short for a multitude of reasons. Last but not least, advice for candidates here. What are you looking for in an AE, and what can someone expect when joining your team?
I think first off, I have to thank Blueprint. Yeah, it's not a plug, but honestly, it's made our life easier in surfacing the right AEs for us to speak to in the first place. So I don't think I've ever had a bad conversation with a prospective AE. In fact, if we had the capacity, I'd love to hire them all.
Yeah.
But for AEs who are coming in, I think main things that we look out for, one is a growth mindset. They look at this as, I also call it a founder's mindset. They're not looking at this as just a job, but they're looking at this as, hey, how do I own this entire part of the business? How do I grow it? How do I look at not just the sales aspect, but bring in different portions of the startup for us to grow together? I think the second part is problem solving as well. When you're looking at things as a founder, you're also constantly solving problems very, very fast. So we're not looking for somebody who's, reaching out for each thing to say, hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? Instead, they're approaching it first. And if they try and fail, that's totally fine. But, we have the coaching air cover to then come and say, hey, this is how we should do this together. And then we achieve together. I think that's a huge part of it. Yeah. Both of those together, I think, draw a strong baseline because, there are general characteristics like, passion, drive, communication that I think are table stakes. These are the additional things that set them apart.
Yep. No, that makes sense. Well, look, that's all the time we have today, but thank you for coming in and sharing your story and kind of your approach. I think it's great for people to hear from, true leaders, right? That I think we have a total crisis in our country and in corporate America, maybe around the world, of just having like true leadership. And you are one of those folks, and what you all are doing at Rocketlane is truly amazing and admirable. And so I'm glad some folks hopefully got to kind of see that firsthand. And if you are interested in Rocketlane in any positions, go to their website. You can go to our website. We have all the roles up, and they've got more roles on theirs, and apply. But these are great folks to work with, and thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Krissy. Thanks for having me on, and hopefully we'll get a longer episode in season 2 too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.